And we come now for public input, and we have a request from the Maritime Union of New Zealand to speak on the issue of health and safety at ports of Auckland, and that's an item that's on the agenda at the moment. So I think Russell Main, is Russell? Yeah, Russell, please come forward if there's anybody else that wants to join you for that. Welcome along, and you'll be aware that we provide under standing orders that there's usually 5 minutes set aside for you to make a presentation, and then we usually take up to 3 questions which are relevant to what you are putting in front of us. You can take less than 5 minutes and leave a bit more time for questions if you prefer. That's entirely up to you, but welcome to both of you, and look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for allowing us to come and make this presentation to the Council. It's an interesting time we're at the moment, and I think we're on the cusp of possibly making the workplace at the ports of Auckland a far, far safer workplace. And that comes from our membership. A big thanks to the Council and the Mayor for providing the report and the 45 recommendations that come out of the report, because without that, it would just be business as usual in that port, and our members would be going to work in a far, far more dangerous position. So with that, I guess our concerns is in regards to the commitment of POAL in making those and fulfilling those recommendations of the Health and Safety Report, especially under 2.0.5. which states that POAL do accept responsibility for their workplace culture and are working to improve it. The difficult relationships between Maritime Union of New Zealand and POA has at times hampered health and safety improvement. For health and safety to continue to improve at POAL, it is essential that all parties work collaboratively to support health and safety. Look, it's very simple. The union has always been willing to collaborate in health and safety, because it's the primary function of a union is to make sure that its membership works in a workplace that is healthy and safety. Up until that report, that did not happen at the ports of Auckland. And I think the report makes that very clear. It's very difficult for us to work in a collaborative fashion when all the work that the union has done in health and safety, and that is bringing in experts from Australasia, that's New Zealand and Australia, to come in there and give recommendations in their field of expertise, has been ignored by the port company. So going forward, of course, we're willing to, at delegate level and at official level, to engage with management and to engage with the experts and assist and advice. And we think we've got a real role to play there, because, both myself and Craig just sitting here, there's probably, we're getting a bit old in the tooth, there's probably nearly 70, 80 years of experience just sitting here in a workplace that up until 6 or 8 years ago did not have these fatalities. Certainly when I started there as a young man, I think I only experienced 1 death in 30 years. And, that was a tragedy. So there is a number of recommendations in that report, and for those recommendations to succeed, we believe that the union has to be party to designing the fix to it. So that means we've got to be in at ground level and right the way through and putting these in place. Unfortunately, what we see at the moment is that it's still a very much top level driven down policy and how they're going to deal with the recommendations, and we think that will fail, and inevitably that will be at the cost of the workplace. So it appears that the POA has already developed a high-level plan for the implementation of the 45 recommendations in the review. That will be a challenging report to do and to put in place, yet the range of expertise that's required, I think, to address that hasn't been put in place at the ports of Auckland. It's just the same way of doing things that was done over the last 8 years. So, I mean, even despite the report having been released, I think some 4 weeks ago, the health and safety manager down there, we haven't even met with you yet. And I would have thought that would have been one of the first things that's happened, especially given the criticism of both the port company and the union in the report of not being collaborative and working together. So I would say as yet, I haven't seen management at the ports of Auckland engaging in a positive fashion to fix this. The request from the union is that an official be put on the Health and Safety Committee down there at the beginning to guide through the process and get this into work, and to be involved from the very grassroots in designing the policy to fix this. This hasn't happened. To date, that request has been refused. We will be meeting with the Ports of Auckland Health and Safety Manager tomorrow, and they are going to provide a draft of the plan. It's a very different process from worker engagement. POAL should have discussed this plan in depth with the workers and the representative of those workers at the workplace to have a successful one. In summary, really, MUNS is committed to engagement with the POAL, but it still appears to be a very much a management-driven down approach to health and safety from where we're sitting. So I don't see too much has changed, but the positive is, and it is a real positive, because the review that this council got the Ports of Auckland got Chas New Zealand to undertake has meant that for the first time in 10 years, I think we've got a real chance of making the Ports of Auckland a safe workplace. And if we get it right, there won't be any more deaths, and I won't have to sit here and discuss health and safety, and I won't have to go back to my membership and listen to them say what's going on down there. But that won't happen. And trust me, it won't happen if the same top-down driven answers to health and safety are there, because it will always be that operational overrides health and safety, and that can't go on. And that's the report's very clear on it. That's my view. I don't want to take up all your time. I don't know.
We welcome the council getting that report. But we note, like, just a couple of weeks ago, there was another accident at the port where a port worker is still off today. And that was a young worker who was working as a leading hand on the ship, went up through a walkway on the ship on the gangway, on the walkway, stepped back on a closed hatch. That hatch gave way, fell through about 1.5 meters maybe, and it was put in as a minor accident, but still a lost time accident. So, like Russell said, that whole culture's got to change, because we're actually involved in ports right around the country. And for instance, Littleton Port, Port Chalmers, and they have a high level of engagement, but they have a lower level of incident accident rate. So it's not about stopping the job, it's just making sure everyone goes home. So, yeah, that's about it.
Well, thank you very much, Russell and Craig, and for that input. And very clearly, this council is committed to things not being done in the same way. The report is absolutely clear. We have a paper in front of us where we make certain requirements of the ports, including reporting in public to us. And we've added to that a new request that Chasms provide an audit of their implementation of the recommendations and report to us. That's a chair's recommendation today. Report to us in October to ensure that what they've recommended is being progressed and is being carried out in the appropriate way. So we're very serious about health and safety. What we did was, I think, probably unprecedented in the life of this council. I'm not sure whether I overstepped the mark or not, but what we did, and we collectively and unanimously agreed to do that, I think was important in turning around the situation, Russell, that you described, which is quite inadequate. I now have the 3 questions that have come up, so I'll take those questions now. And the first question is in the name of Councillor John Watson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. Have to say it's a little concerning, some of the things you've said. Policies and engagement, of course, are only good as the people that are leading them. And certainly from my perspective, I'd like to know what are the specific roles or positions or membership that you think the union's representatives should have in terms of actually effecting some change here? So you mentioned one of the groupings there. What are some of the committees or groups that you think you should be on that can actually inform this whole process rather than just be individuals at the end of the management rod?
Look, it's a very good question. And I think there's two that's very important. And I think that one, we should have been right at the very beginning in designing the draft plan to implement the recommendations, because the basis of the implementation of the recommendations is going to prove whether they're successful or not, or whether they're logical in the workplace. Because you have to have a balance when you're making recommendations in a workplace like that. You have to have your hat on, I guess, of the company and a health and safety expert, but you also have to have the hat on as a worker and those people who know the dangers out there and know how to fix those things in a practical sense. You can, if you put a foreman on a ship who is in charge, you can prevent an accident. But if you have that foreman on another platform, you're inviting an accident. So it is, look, it's a real concern to us that I'm going to go to a meeting tomorrow and be presented with a draft documentation on the implementations. That means if I don't agree with it, I've got to fight every point that's in the document. And you all know how hard that is as a group of councillors. A lot different from being there at the inception of the document, where you put the document together in a collaborative process. And that's what I think the recommendations of that said to do. The second thing is, why would, if you're a company that's saying that you want to engage in the workforce and you want to bring health and safety back to the prominent position at the workplace, why would you refuse to have a union official on your health and safety committee? Doesn't make sense to me, people, it really doesn't. All it says to me is, we don't want to engage with you, we'll do that as window dressing, but in the end you don't belong in a position where you can affect change in health and safety.
Thank you very much. And the report was very clear that there needed to be an improved relationship from the port's management and board with the union to implement that collectively, and that's what our expectation is. Councillor Kathy Casey.
Yeah, thanks for coming along today, Russell and Craig. This is very disappointing to hear. This council heard from the reviewers about the dysfunctional relationship between union and management and suggested that everybody put aside their differences for the sake of a new era, looking at the safety of our port workers. I thought that was going to happen. Indeed, I heard that was going to happen from the Chief Executive and from the board chair at their press conference later in the day after the Mayor. So my question to you is, what efforts has the union gone to get management and the board involved in matters at the port?
Yeah, again, another good question. Look, I think let's start. You know, our union has a very proud history, and it goes back 150 years. And for the first time in our history, we sent an invitation to the chairperson of the board and the board to attend the special stop work meeting in regards to the health and safety report, so that our members could present to them in a proper fashion, because our meetings are held in a proper fashion under the rules of debate, what was the contents in those reports. Unfortunately, the board never turned up, they never responded and never even told us they weren't coming. And it's a big call for a union to invite a chairperson and a board to their stop work meetings. It's not done casually. Secondly, following that, I have again tried to engage with the chairperson and the board. I've sent them a letter asking for an urgent meeting. I think it's some 5-6 days ago. And I still haven't even received a reply. I wouldn't mind if the reply come and said no, but not to even receive. So why do I doubt the sincerity of the board? I guess I can't say it any better than that. If I don't receive a reply, why would I think that they're going to engage with us in a profitable fashion?
Thank you for that. I think I'm happy to make a call to the board to suggest that the engagement with the union would be very positive in terms and within the spirit of the recommendations. As you'll be aware, one of the people that we've just appointed to the board, which we did after seeking advice from the Council of Trade Unions, is a person that has particular expertise in this area and would, I know, have a strong desire to engage with you. And I expect those sort of meetings to take place if we are to achieve what the recommendations said, which was a more cooperative relationship between the two sides. There shouldn't be two sides on health and safety. There should only be one side. Anyway, last question is from Councillor Deputy Mayor Bill Cashmore, and I've just received one further, so I'll take a final question from Councillor Fletcher after that. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. My question is exactly the same as Kathy's and your perception, Mr Mayor, about the newly appointed director who's a health and safety expert. Have you put your suggestions to that newly appointed board member as sort of it's where expertise lies? Have you done that, or has it gone straight to the chair?
I addressed the letter to the chair because, you know, really the responsibility relies with the chairperson, doesn't it? I don't think it would be at all the right conduit as individual letters to the board members. I mean, that's the position that you're put in as chairperson, is to lead the board and to take the board into the future and respond to those recommendations. So I think that's the appropriate place that the letter went to.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. I was trying and progress this forward, and I think that would be a good move, maybe, to help talk to her directly. And I'll certainly be phoning the chair of the board this afternoon.
Okay, I think we may be able to facilitate it. We're not in a position to direct the board, but we can make suggestions to the board, and a cooperative approach certainly is consistent with the whole thrust of the Chasn's report, and I'd expect that to be happening. Last question this time from Councillor Chris Fletcher.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming today. I want to know from you, and I am very mindful of the legislative restraints and other issues that can provide obstacles, but what is it you expect from us as a governing body on an ongoing basis in terms of monitoring? And I ask you that question in the context of my late father was on the harbour board, and he was also the manufacturer of, through Lee's Industries, of a lot of equipment. And he used to regularly sit down with the union because he knew the complexity of the equipment that was being used. And so when I read Roger McRae's report, and I realised just that lack of knowledge on what was actually required with the equipment and the risks, the inherent risks there, I was genuinely shocked. So I want to know what my obligations are sitting here today, what your expectations of us are, even though there are complexities in the way that the legislation was crafted. As a union, what do you expect from us in terms of monitoring what goes on at the port?
Well, I guess it's not only as a union, but it's a ratepayer as well. Look, we're very clear in what we think the council. We understand the restrictions and the constraints that the council is under because of the legislation. But what we think that's appropriate is that when the council asks the questions of the senior manager at the port company in regards to the performance of the port company, not only in the areas of health and safety, but also in how the port is run, then the port company should be giving the answers back to the councillors so that the councillors are informed. Because unfortunately, I don't think you are getting the right message back from the company, especially in regards to automation. If I was sitting on the other side of the table here today, I would be extremely concerned about the performance of the port company. I would be extremely concerned about the amount of money that has been borrowed to implement automation. And you understand the complexities of getting the right equipment in there that fits into the slot. And at the moment, the performance of the port company as far as box rate and that, I'm not even sure you're getting the relevant information. I mean, our union has taken a step to try and confirm the validity of the box rates that are being put across out there in the public arena because, to tell you the truth, I don't believe them. I don't think they're accurate, but so that's what all we can ask from you is to monitor the performance of the Ports of Auckland as a union and make sure those decisions that are being implemented are logical and suit the situation of the port. And as far as health and safety are concerned, is that you have a board who has members on the board, because that's where you do have an influence, and you've already started that with the appointment of Hazel Armstrong, and you know that is a very positive step. But that's where you do have an influence of who's on the board and who leads that board in the direction that the company will take going into the future.
Thank you, Russell,
That
and thank
practical
you.
expertise, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Russell, and thank you, Craig, for that. I'm going to move that we receive the input from your union, and to thank you for expressing your position. And it's not in the resolution, but also to acknowledge that this is a concern that you have raised over a period of time, and we acknowledge that. Councillor Casey is seconding that vote of thanks. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you for appearing before us today, and we will try to facilitate and to encourage that cooperative attitude between the port management, the port board, and yourself on health and safety. That's critical in my view. Thank you very much. Councillors, we now, there is no public input.